my job is to identify these children who do have these challenges, whether it's when they read, they lose their place as they're reading, or the words move, and so they have a hard time just keeping their attention on their paper versus when I get this from the paper, how do I get it into my brain and what do I do with that information? And so what we do is identify, and then of course, just like anything else, this is a developmental challenge. It either did or it didn't. So my job is to find out what the problem is and then guide them through that process so they don't have to have those challenges anymore, and we can take away vision from the puzzle and it can happen just automatically the way that I'm hoping most people's visual system does work. Is I get to see, it's single and it's clear, my brain doesn't think about how I see, and processing happens automatically as well. But for those who struggle with this, it doesn't. And so it just takes energy away from the high level stuff of what am I reading, and it puts the energy into what am I reading, just trying to get it off the paper.
Okay. How is it different than dyslexia?
This is a tough one. It may be, it may not be. And I mean that in a way where you can have a visual processing problem and you can have a dyslexic type reading problem, or we could have more of what I call a visual spatial challenge, which affects my ability to understand what I'm seeing. So letters, they're really complicated. When we think of dyslexia, a lot of people think, oh, I reverse letters. I am not an expert on dyslexia by any means. It is far more complicated than that. But when we think of dyslexia and we label, oh, my child is 8 and they're reversing letters, it just means dyslexia. Maybe, but also maybe not. And that's part of what I get to dive into, because if there is an underlying vision problem, there's this whole track that we can work on and see, is it still there or is it not? When we look at what understanding those letters are, it's complicated. Our B's, D's, P's, and Q's, they're all the same. It just depends on where it is. So the circle and the stick, where is the stick, where is the circle? And depending on where it is, it means something different. So for somebody who struggles with how their eyes work, they don't understand space. They don't understand how to organize their writing and put spaces between their words, which then for some people looks like it's coming up with dyslexic properties versus letter reversals and whatnot. So that's not my job to whether to diagnose or, say, is it or isn't it, but we get to look and say, okay, is this making reading more difficult? And if they have that, and I can start from the bottom and I see vision, and they have a tracking problem, they have a visual perceptual problem, and then we see that we have a visual spatial problem as we go along this line of development, we can say, okay, let's address from the bottom instead of working at these intense phonics programs at the top, because those help, but where is it coming from? And there's a lot of kids who I see who they have dyslexia. They have these challenges, and vision's part of it as well, and it's just another thing we can work through to help them get there. And for other ones, a lot of those dyslexic tendencies sometimes go away. It's hard to say. It is so case by case, but they're with anything. I'm talking about how does vision affect reading? Same with dyslexia. How is that my brain processing affecting my ability to read what's on this paper and understand it?
Right. So, mom or dad or a school teacher is not going to see, oh, there's a reading issue going, there's a visual comprehension issue going on. They are going to see something else. What is it that, because one of the things that I know that Sue is so wanting to educate people on is that they are able to get a feel for things that might be going on that for a kid might just get frustrated. They don't pay attention. They're staring at a blank wall and they've lost their ability to or their willingness to be in the classroom, to engage, etc. And it's not some behavioral issue, possibly. It could be just something within that interpretation of light coming, off the paper, off life, and into the interpretation of what this means, right? Yes. So help us a little bit understand in laywomen's terms what this looks like.
So what we look at is a child who's having a hard time, whether that is with reading comprehension, whether it is their attention, their focus, whether it is letter reversals, or just their ability to coordinate their body through their world where they're just clumsy or they're unaware or they're bumping into things. what I get to look at is there a reason? Is there something underneath all of the things that we're seeing at these high levels that is causing these different behaviors? Okay. So a child who's in 4th grade who hates reading, is super disengaged, who fights mom to not want to do their homework, very well may feel pretty miserable as they go to read. Their actual visual system may have to work really hard just to see. And when they do that, they get tired. Or the words move. And that's what I dealt with as a child. And when I read, the words split, they moved. It was really hard to keep my attention. And I didn't read because it was hard. It wasn't that I couldn't necessarily understand that in a sense, because if you read me a story, I understood everything. But if I had to physically get those words from the paper, out of there, into my brain, make sense of them while I'm trying to keep my place, not lose where I'm going, that's where all the challenge comes in. And that's where the frustration comes in, is what this child doing harder than what it's supposed to be? And for about a quarter of kids, it might be, and that's where we get to look into. And there's not just one thing. There could be other things on the way. We could have an attention deficit disorder that makes it physically hard to pay attention, or we could have a vision problem that makes it physically uncomfortable to pay attention, therefore we don't. And that's really what I get to do, is find out, is there a reason? And if there is a reason, let's address it at the source and see what are we left with. And that's the part where it's hard to say, because all of these things come across in very different ways. We have some incredibly behavioral kids who just are frustrated, or we see kids who are super anxious, or we have testing anxiety, or we just are avoidant to all things. And then we have other kids who, despite things are super hard, continue to just push through it. And then eventually, that weight gets too heavy and they just drop it all. And we have those kids who are straight A students in, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, all of a sudden 4th grade, and it's what happened. And so I wish there was a simple, easy way to know exactly what it is. It's easy for me because this is what I do all day, every day. But for a parent, it is tough. And so that's what we're trying to do, is educate people and parents that there may be something that's going on that we can do something about and actually make it so it's not so hard, or make it so it's not so uncomfortable to read, or make it so my brain isn't running on 1,000 miles a minute and I'm able to take in that information and my brain can store it effectively so I can just understand my world. Versus other kids, there's just too much all the time. There's just a lot of sensory information. So it's tough. It's one of those things where if we suspect or we see these signs, we look and we see, and it may be, it may not. But if it is, we're able to help. And that's what I do, and that's what anyone in my field is looking to do, is find out, is there a reason? Is there an underlying source? Because truly how our system functions, this is very basic things. For the average person, it just happens. We don't think about how we see, it just does. Right. And so that's the hard part here, is children don't know any different, and a lot of adults don't either. It's amazing where, I get adults all the time who are struggling with discomfort and headaches and this fatigue and this inability to focus, and we think that, maybe we have ADHD as an adult, but it may also stem from, it's amazing, our eyes.
Wow. What I love of what I'm hearing you say is that you're able to at least put some organization or put some concept that helps us then address this, whatever it is, this lack of comprehension, lack of attention, lack of ability to focus, frustration, etc., into something actual manageable and therefore workable. If you could just share with us a little bit about
Bright Minds Processing.
Bright Minds Processing. Bright Minds Processing.
Bright Minds Processing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I met Sue. At this point, it's been a couple years, and she is just one of those moms who was frustrated and found this small niche world of visual processing, auditory processing, and got to see what difference it makes in their child's life and wanted to do something. So that's, to me, the hardest part about my profession. I'm here for a reason. If I did not have the experiences that I had, there's no way I'd be sitting here right now, because it never comes across our mind. And that's the hard part, is there's a ton of optometrists in this country, but very few of us actually do this part, this vision development, this how does the function work, and so you just don't know about it. Auditory processing, it's even less. And so these two fields that really, when we work with children who have these challenges, it is remarkable. And the parents who get the opportunity to know about this, and if their child has it, get the chance to go through this process to actually come out the other side, it is remarkable. And you'll hear, from those parents, because it's life changing, and it was for me as well. So for her, just in general, that's what she has. She had that frustration. She got to see how transformative it was to her child, and just she wants to get the word out. So it's amazing, because I have very little voice, and us as a collective group. So in the beginning, when you asked me, is this new? This isn't new. It's been around for a really long time, but it's new to you, and it's new to a lot of other people. Yeah. And so that's what's so remarkable about her, is she truly doesn't want kids to, we don't want it because you don't know. And that's why it's just amazing, is that she's trying to get the word out there so people can know and they can be educated that there could be something else causing challenges, and to look into it. And that's the reason why I'm sitting here, is the same thing, is I wish I had that opportunity. I'm okay. I made it through school. I went to college, I went to graduate school, I got a fellowship in this amazing career, and it was a lot of work. I had to work a lot harder than what I, should have had to, and it's okay, fine, we're here. But it would have been nice to have that identified as a child, so I didn't end up with this crazy high prescription and really not reading until I was in my 20s. I mean, yeah, so it'd be nice to not have to go through all of that. Yeah, it's part of my story, and it got me where I am here today, but it's not everyone is as lucky as I was. I had a lot of help and a lot of support.